We're continuing our reading of The Crossroads. It's chapter 4. Is she? Jamie froze. No, they couldn't. They wouldn't dare. Not Abuela. Angela didn't meet Jamie's eyes. Instead, she blinked rapidly as if yesterday's desert dust had blown into hers. She's alive. Barely. Jamie let out the breath he was holding. ¿Qué pasó? Come inside, Tomas called from behind Angela. Some automatic force moved his legs up the metal steps a second time while he imagined Abuela, gray hair pulled into a tight bun so no stray strand would land in the food. Her eyes narrowed as she scolded him and Maguel for sneaking bits of food from the pan when they thought she wasn't looking. But then her eyes would soften as she slipped them broken pieces of tortillas dripping with honey, lime, and salt. Instead, the trailer, a puddle of melted snow, surrounded the door where Angela had taken off her boots. Jamie stood in place, his thoughts still on his grandmother. Tomas's hair stood straight up, and his eyes had that dazed look of someone who just woke up and was not ready to deal with the world. Angela sat on the bed. She had converted back to the table, hugging her knees to her chest. They've really hurt her. Jamie snapped out of his stupor. But why? Abuela is old. And help. But then he stopped. He didn't want to think of her like that. Like she'd become in the last few years, with Abuelo gone and her arthritis taking over. Instead, he remembered her when he was 5 and some kids who became future alphas were teasing him for coloring with pink. To be fair, he colored with all of the crayons, not wanting one color to be upset for not being used. Abuela had grabbed both boys by an ear, dragged them into the wash basin, and squirted blue dish soap into their mouths to clean out the dirty words. Then, under her glare, sputtering and spitting out suds, they both apologized. Word got around after that you don't mess with Jamie and Angela's Abuela. That shattered her power over bullies, cut into his heart. How dare they? Why would the Alphas attack her? Jamie asked. I don't know, Angela muttered. Us? Jamie braced a hand against the aluminum door. The trailer had never felt so small, even though it was about the same size as his house back home. But why? We're gone. They'd left their family in Guatemala, almost died in Mexico, and came to live here specifically to avoid the Alphas attack. And for what? When they took it out on Abuela? I hope she told them where to shove it, Tomas scooped 3 spoons of coffee powder into a mug of water before slamming it in the microwave. In a Catholic, Abuela sort of way. Angela hugged her knees tighter. Papa confirmed she said nothing about our whereabouts. You know she wouldn't. No, she wouldn't. When Jamie had stopped Abuela from butchering one of their hens because he was too pretty to die, she had beautiful bluish-gray feathers that in the right light looked purple. Abuela had told the rest of the family she wasn't in the mood for chicken that night. When Rosita, Angela and Miguel's older sister, got pregnant with Kiko without being married, Abuela was the first one to know, and the one who helped Rosita tell the rest of the family. Abuela would do anything for her family, and anything to defend them. Tell me everything Tio said. Jamie folded his arms across his chest, made difficult with Tomas's oversized winter coat still on. Angela focused her attention on Vita, who was lying on the bed, belly up, showing the scar of the wound that had almost cost her her life. Papa said Abuela was coming home after selling tortillas at the market. They robbed her of the few coins she had earned. Then they started questioning her. About us? Jamie said with disgust. They still want us? Through the window by Angela's bed, he could see the snow sparkling in the sunlight. As far as he was concerned, they couldn't be farther away from the Alphas who terrorized their jungle-bordered village, and yet they still weren't safe. More like angry that we got away. Angela buried her head in Vita's short brown and white coat, while the dog abandoned the belly rub request to provide comfort kisses instead. It's not going to be hard to figure out you've come to me. It's no secret that I'm here. Tomas swigged his coffee, then spat it back into the mug as thick steam escaped from his mouth. But I doubt they'll make the effort to travel all this way here for you two. Not that they'd find the ranch anyway. You're safe. Safe here while Abuela is everything but safe. Jamie held his arm tighter across his chest. The whole thing made Jamie sick. And then what? They beat her up when she didn't talk? Angela shook her head, but kept her teary eyes on Vita. They pushed her down some steps. This time, Jamie said some nasty things along with Tomas, and Angela wasn't even done sharing the news. She broke her hip and was knocked unconscious. She'll probably never walk again. They're gonna pay for this, Jamie shouted. They can't get away with abusing everyone. Except they could. And they were. I'm going back, Jamie's voice changed from loud and angry to low and determined. I don't care what happens to me. They have to learn their lesson. How do you plan to stop them? Tomas asked. I don't know. Jamie took in the things around the trailer he had accumulated in just a week. We'd have to pack food and new clothes. His new sketchbook. Crossing back into Mexico would be much easier than what he'd already been through. If he was lucky, immigration officers might give him a free ride all the way back to Guatemala for being somewhere he didn't belong. And once he was there, the Alphas would remember no one messed with his abuela. How exactly he'd teach the Alphas a lesson, he'd figure out later. He picked up his new backpack from where he dumped it yesterday, and Tomas removed it from his hands. What do you plan to do? Kill them? Do you really want to be responsible for someone's death? You'd be no better than they are. But Tomas was right. Jamie couldn't become like them. That's what happened when Anakin Skywalker in Star Wars. But trying to rid evil, he became evil. I'm still going back. We can't, Angela mumbled. That's why they hurt her, to show us and everyone else in the village that no one can run away. They control everyone in the village. They told Abuela that if we ever showed our faces again, they'd kill us and the rest of the family, except for baby Kiko. They would keep him. Jamie leaned against the door. The winter clothes he still had on almost suffocated him in the warm trailer. So it was true. He really wouldn't ever be able to see his family again. He didn't care if they killed him. He could live with that thought. His death would be worthy, if only to be with his family again, to see Abuela and help her recover. But he couldn't be responsible for the murder of all of them as well. As it was, the guilt of Magwell's murder still hung over his head. If Jamie had walked from school with Magwell like normal, instead of staying home, maybe Magwell would still be alive. And now, Abuela, if she never walked again, that would be his fault too. In turning to keep them safe, she had been hurt. No one could say it wasn't his fault. So we stay here and just do nothing? Jamie demanded. For now, Tomas said. Outside, their footsteps in the snow were starting to show patches of brown dirt. Jamie finally ripped off his winter clothes and threw them in a pile. Doing nothing. That was worse than everything else put together.